Hi, this is Father Bill W. here in Austin, Texas. Want to welcome you to this series we're doing on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been in recovery myself since December of 1972. If I make it another week or two, coming up on 46 years in the program. What has particularly interested me for a number of years has been a study of the Oxford group, the pioneer members in AA, and I was really interested in how it was that they worked the program that was to eventually become the 12-step program. Hope you'll visit our website at twowayprayer.org, and if you do Facebook, I hope you'll follow me at Father Bill W. And we do lots of sharings on two-way prayer there, and I'd love to hear from you if you begin doing that practice. Please try to stay in touch. Now, in our last episode, we began our look at the 12 steps, and we were approaching it from the viewpoint of history. I really believe that the history has something to teach us if we understand where the steps came from, how it was they were being worked in the earliest days. I think you're going to find a much simpler program and a much stronger program. So that's really the intent of this series, is to introduce you to that world so that it will help you in your own recovery. So back in the 1930s, when Bill Wilson got sober, and then Dr. Bob got sober, and the first 100 people or so came into recovery, there was no 12-step program. They all got sober pretty much in the Oxford group, and then they separated out from it and began their own program, and they called that Alcoholics Anonymous. When Wilson was writing the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, he wanted to center it around the program, and he sat down to write about a number of steps. What he was trying to do in that process was to create a series of steps that the alcoholics could go through, so that they wouldn't wiggle out of the Oxford group program. Was kind of loosey-goosey, and he knew us alcoholics are kind of sneaky people, and we need to kind of hold our feet to the fire. So that's why he was kind of determined to put the program on paper and in form, and do it in ways that alcoholics couldn't escape from it. You know what I mean? Okay, so here's a quote from Pass It On about Bill writing the steps. This is AA literature. It says there that as he started to write, he asked for guidance, and that was their practice. When we get to the 11th step, that's what you're going to learn about, is that there was a form of prayer and meditation that they did in the early days of the program that has been totally lost. And so he was accustomed to doing that, and that's actually how the 12 steps came to be. So again, as he started to write, he asked for guidance, and he relaxed. The words began tumbling out with astonishing speed. He completed the first draft in about half an hour, then kept on writing until he felt he should stop and review what he had written. Numbering the new steps, he found they added up to 12, a symbolic number. He thought of the 12 apostles, and soon became convinced that the society should have 12 steps. Now, this episode is going to be devoted to step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, ... that our lives had become unmanageable. I think you can make a pretty good case that of all of the 12 steps, it is probably the most important. And the reason for that is without it, nothing much is going to happen until we are ready to admit the truth of our own alcoholism, of our own addiction, to our innermost selves, as the big book says, we're probably going to not going to make too much progress with the program. Now, Wilson said that he got steps 2 and 11 straight from Sam Shoemaker, the Episcopal priest who worked with him in New York City, and was the head of the Oxford group in the United States. So that accounts for steps 2 through 11. We'll get into those in the coming episodes. But that doesn't tell us where step 1 came from or step 12. And I think you can make a pretty good case that step 1 derives in large part from Dr. William Silkworth. And Silkworth was the medical director at Towns Hospital, where Bill Wilson was hospitalized himself for treatment in the course of about a year and a half. He had entered treatment no fewer than 4 times. Silkworth was a very gentle man, a very kind man. He loved alcoholics. He really desperately wanted to help them, and he wanted to help Bill, and thought that he showed a lot of promise, particularly the first couple of times that he was in there. This is a bright guy, energetic guy, pretty young guy in his late 30s at that time. And he felt like he was going to get it. But time after time, Bill would leave there with high hopes and would quickly fall again. Silkworth had what he called an allergy theory. Back in those days, that they didn't understand alcoholism nearly as well as we do today. Now we know it's a brain chemistry illness. They can put us in the laboratory and light up our brains, and you taking alcohol, taking drugs, we can see the different parts of the brain that lights up. And but they didn't have that back then. So what Silkworth knew was that God, alcoholics sure drink differently than other people, and he came up with what he called an allergy theory. It's a simple theory, kind of goes like this: that physically, people can be allergic to different things. You can be allergic to penicillin. You can be allergic to pollen. You can be allergic to peanuts. And when the body comes in contact with those, there is a reaction. And that was about the best he could do, because he knew that when alcoholics came in contact with alcohol, there was a reaction. And the reaction was a physical craving that developed in them, that did not develop in other people. So that when the alcoholic takes a drink, what is triggered physically is a craving for more. And this is a very simple understanding of addiction and really how it works at a physical level. Here's again from Pass It On, a book telling about Bill's encounter with Silkworth. It says, Bill listened entranced as Silkworth explained his theory. For the first time in his life, Bill was hearing about alcoholism, not as a lack of willpower, not as a moral defect, but as a legitimate illness. It was Silkworth's theory, unique at the time, that alcoholism was the combination of this mysterious physical allergy and the compulsion to drink. That alcoholism could no more be defeated by willpower than could tuberculosis. Bill's relief was immense. Now, I believe there are 2 key words that Bill used in the writing of step 1. I actually think there's a third word that isn't present there, and we'll get to that in a while. But I think it's really important that people understand the difference between the two key words that are in the step. And those words, of course, are powerless and unmanageable. I remember early in my treatment, a guy sat me down, and I had been through treatment a couple of times and had failed. Didn't make it a 4 like Bill, but I did I did fail a couple of times. And this fella sat me down, and he had really struggled with his own alcoholism. His name was Jim Powers. He's long dead now. And I remember today where I was sitting when he taught me this. I remember the room I was in. I remember so much about that because it was one of those eureka moments for me when the lights came on, and somebody had just explained alcoholism, my alcoholism, in a way that I could get it, and he explained step one in a way that I could get it. Filled in a few of the gaps over the years studying some of the history, but that man gave me the key. And this is what I want to pass on to individuals because it was a simple explanation that he gave, and it's one that really jives with the history. Um, and so, powerless. What does powerless mean? I believe it means that physical allergy, that if you think of being powerless over alcohol, think of being powerless over peanuts, think of being powerless over penicillin. All right. When you take them, something is going to happen. Um, and it's really important, people who are allergic to penicillin or to peanuts, they take that pretty damn seriously. They don't fool around with them. They don't go near them. All right. They have admitted to their innermost self that they are allergic to them and that something really terrible is going to happen if they encounter them. So, of course, the encounter, what we experience is the craving. Um, and the man told me, you're going to hear people say a lot of things about powerless. What are you powerless over? Over the years, I've heard people say, "Well, I'm powerless over people, places, and things." Um, that would have driven that man nuts, and it kind of drives me nuts too, because an addict has got to understand at the deepest level of his comprehension that he is powerless over alcohol. When is he powerless over it? When he drinks it. All right. I'm not powerless over it when I'm walking down the street. We'll get to that in a minute about the mental part of the illness. But the physical part of the illness is where I believe, and I think historically you can make a pretty darn good case that that's what Wilson was talking about when he said we are powerless over alcohol. All right, that we don't drink like other people, that it triggers this craving, um, and and once I go to it, I'm off to the races. Um, so when I take alcohol into my system, my experience was I drank too much. I always drank more than I intended to drink. All right. I want to get high. I want to go to a certain level. But I don't want another DWI. I don't want another fight with my wife. I don't want, be gone for 3 days. I just want the high. But I don't have a choice about that. Just like anybody who's allergic, this is what's going to happen. So I really encourage people to think of it that way, that powerlessness is the physical element that goes along with this illness. So what happens when you drink more than you intended to drink? You get drunk. All right. That's what happens. All right. And then when you get drunk, you get into all sorts of problems. You get physical problems that go along with this illness. You get legal problems that go along with this illness. You get employment problems that happen. You get family problems that happen. All of the consequences of being drunk or stoned. That's what happens to us. Um, and then what is it we attempt to do? Most of us will attempt somewhere along the line uh, to quit. All right, to how do I escape from this thing? How do I get out from under this thing? All right. So my hope is if you're an addict, that you've made an attempt to quit before this. I know I did. Um, and so I asked people, well, how long did you go? And someone will say, well, I quit and I was serious about it. I was determined to do it. And those are important elements. It's not just, well, I think I'll quit. No, I'm talking about really trying to quit. How long did you go? Um, 2 weeks, a month. That's a long time. 6 months, a year. I we are able to go for a period of time. The amount of time varies. It's not so important. But what happens eventually is the other word kicks in, and that other word is unmanageable. Now, I believe the big mistake that many people make in 12-step programs is they look at the consequences of their drinking, the consequences of their drug use. They look at all the problems that came along, and they say, "Damn, my life is unmanageable." Now, I don't know about you, but I drank a lot. I got in trouble, and I never once woke up and said, "Damn, my life is sure unmanageable." I never used the "you" word, all right, until I came into the program. But in the program, I heard people using it. Now, the history, I think, can teach us something really important about where that unmanageable word came from and why it is very likely that Bill Wilson chose that specific word when he was writing his 12 steps. All right. It's an Oxford group word. And he was sober in the Oxford group. And he was used to hearing people talk about unmanageability. And so when he uses it, that's he's referring to something very different than just getting drunk and having all of those problems. All right, where'd the word come from? It was there's a story behind it. It's the Oxford Group people. Frank Bookman was the founder of the Oxford Group, and he was in India at one time on a kind of a mission trip. So they're an evangelical um, Christian group out to change the world, out to help people. And God knows alcoholics needed help, so a lot of us wound up following them, and that's how Wilson got himself into the deal. But they're traveling, and Bookman is over in India, and he's at a school at the base of the Himalaya Mountains. It's an exotic story, and and the people at the school tell him, "Well, we have this student here, Dr. Bookman, and I think we're going to have to send him home. He's nothing but trouble. Um, he's lying, cheating, stealing, whatever. Lots of problems." And so Bookman spends some time with the boy. They ask him to do that. And what Bookman does is he shares some of his own defeats. Usually when you get in trouble, people yell at you and they scream at you, and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. But Bookman took a different tack with people. He told them his own problems, and then how he had victory over his difficulties. And that's what he did with Victor. And Victor turned his life around. He changed. He surrendered. He asked God for help. And he did it by saying a prayer. It was a simple prayer, but it was a prayer that Bookman liked and that the people in the Oxford group liked. And his prayer was this: Lord, I cannot manage my life. Manage it for me. And there's that element of manageability, so that when Wilson was searching for a word, there's the word he chose. So what is unmanageable? When is my life unmanageable? I think that's a question every addict has got to ask. My life is not unmanageable when I'm drinking or using. Then it's a mess. My life is unmanageable when I'm not drinking and not using and trying my very best to stay sober. And I can't. That's what Wilson meant by unmanageability. That there's, in addition to a physical part of the illness, and this goes right back to his doctor, Silkworth, there was another part of the illness. So part of it's physical and part of it is mental. The mental is an obsession that I have with alcohol. My mind, my best thinking, my best willpower is not sufficient. I get driven back to using once again. All right. That is an unmanageable life. All right. Someone said, my life is unmanageable by me. See, that by me. That's the element. So when is my life unmanageable? When I'm not drinking. I haven't had a drink in almost 46 years. My life is still unmanageable. I have that mental quirk inside of me that is prone to telling me, yeah, come on, you can go back and do it. You can do it. God, you haven't had a drink in all these years, blah, blah, blah. That's the insanity. And that's the mental obsession that makes our lives unmanageable, that makes us, puts us in a position where we have to have help. And that help, of course, has to come from outside of ourselves, which just makes perfect sense. Since I'm the cause of my own problem, it's my own thinking that got me here. I can't rely on my own thinking to get sober. I have to rely on something else or someone else. And that's what really opens the door then to the rest of the steps. Now, I said there was actually three words, and the third word is not actually present in the first step. And that word is when you put together in one person someone who is powerless over alcohol, and they have an unmanageable life. They have a mental obsession that drives them back to alcohol. All right. What you've got there is a vicious circle. That the last thing I should do as an alcoholic is drink. Well, the most normal thing for me to do as an alcoholic is to drink because that's part of my illness. It doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense. It's the illness. Our families look at us and say, "Why is he doing it? Stop doing that, for God's sakes." Well, if I could, I would, but I can't. I can't. And it's that experience of I can't that is the word that's missing in step one. The word is hopeless. The word is hopeless. I want to read. Took some notes on from the big book, and encourage you to do this yourself. Just go through the first several chapters of the book and see how often that word comes up. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. That's from Bill's story. Certainly I was interested. I had to be for I was hopeless. Again, Bill's story. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. We have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. We have come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. Wilson said he didn't get step 1 or 12 from Shoemaker, so he got one in part from Silkworth, but the other part I believe he got from William James, the Harvard psychologist. Bill was given a book called Varieties of Religious Experiences during his last detox at Towns Hospital. He devoured that book. He said he wasn't much of a reader, but that book answered many questions that he had about his problem. And one of the core elements there is that James takes psychic changes, spiritual experience. He takes them seriously. He does studies of about 50 people. Some of them were drunks. And he says there's a common denominator to each of their stories. And that was ego deflation at depth. Those are the doctor's words. Ego deflation at depth. You get the stuffing knocked out of you. And then it's like there's nothing left. It's deeper until that ego is surrendered and ready for a psychic change. It requires the crushing of our egos. I don't know anybody who gets here in a way other than that. And I was the therapist for a number of years. I remember sitting in group with two guys. One was there because his lawyer said it'd be good for him to go to treatment. He had been in a DWI, killed 4 people. And sitting right next to him was a guy who checked himself into treatment because he had gotten drunk and missed his son's birthday. And that guy had sworn on his mother's grave that his alcohol use, his drinking would never, ever affect his kids. And it did. And he was a puddle. All right. One guy got sober and the other didn't. The guy who missed the kid's birthday, he got sober. I was in touch with him. Last time I talked to him, he had 30 some odd years. His ego got crushed. But what does it can be different things for different people. Wilson writes this. These gifts of grace, whether they come in a rush or very gradually, were all founded on a basis of hopelessness. He's writing about William James's book. The recipients were people who in some controlling area of life found themselves in a situation that could not be gotten over, around, or under. Their defeat had been absolute, and so was mine. I don't think you can understand step 1 without including a deep understanding of the hopelessness that goes with it. So step 1, lessons that I'm powerless, that when I drink, I don't drink like other people. When I drink, this is what happens to me. Craving sets in. That craving leads to more than I would want to drink. Boom, I'm drunk and in trouble. My life is unmanageable. When I try to quit, I can't quit because part of my illness sends me right back to the very thing that is doing me in. Step 1 sucks. If I could sum it up in one word, it sucks. But it is also kind of like a launching pad. for a rocket. If you are crushed, I remember when I hit my bottom, I had run out of places to run. It was like the end of the road, and I didn't understand psychologically what was going on then, but it was like a crack in my ego system. That was step one for me. That I could not go on the way I was. After a couple of treatment failures, I went back to a counselor I had worked with in the past, and it was like I turned myself in, and I said, "What do I have to do?" And he said, "Are you willing to go to any lengths to get sober?" And without a thought, I said, "Absolutely, absolutely." I got to the same place Bill got to. I got there at 27. People can get there at 18. It's not a matter of age, and it's not a matter of even how much you drank or drugged. It's a matter of, has your ego been cracked? Are you down, and are you ready to do it differently this time? So I think that's a good way to get us going on the 12 steps. Step one. Hope you'll check out our website, the Two-Way Prayer website. Easy to find, and try to follow along on Facebook. And I'm going to try to make these episodes on the steps as simple as I can. I believe this is a simple program for very complicated people. So hope this was helpful to you. God bless, and keep coming back.